We want them to create workflows. So we can see, and the best way to get everybody to do the, in that functional role to do things the same way, we need the workflow. So that's what we're dealing with.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to share? Oh, come on, you got some little nugget. All right, we're not going to let you off the hook the whole time.
Quick question. Did you decide, are all the 17 disciplines housed in one SharePoint site so that or did you set up separate areas for them to work?
They each, and I'll let we really are stressing the business, meeting the business needs today rather than how the SharePoint, and Corey can talk to the actual SharePoint. But the disciplines, I may belong to multiple disciplines. So we have a discipline SharePoint committee that talks about the template, because unlike some other SharePoint sites, there are some basic things that they want to be exactly the same across all of the disciplines, and then there may be some variation. So we are working as a team. We work with them to coordinate that and get that basic template for all the sites. Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
The thing that stands out most to me, and I'm glad you mentioned that people belong to various disciplines, because all I can think about is, I didn't raise my hand when you asked if my organization was doing a knowledge management initiative, because the organization wouldn't recognize that some of the things that they're doing are knowledge management.
This is true.
Yes, and we're working on that. But what we get a lot is this is not my job, or they identify most strongly with one group that they happen to belong to. Do you find that this disciplinary structure doesn't really enable taking away the silos, the cross-disciplinary interaction? Do people feel more strongly associated with one discipline over others?
You have to remember there are two things going on here. You have the actual discipline initiative, which forget any SharePoint or anything else. There is a lot of work going on to make them a cohesive group outside of any knowledge sharing. And then you have the SharePoint site that supports that. So it's really, to answer your question, it's a work in progress, and they're getting there. And some of them, as with everything, some of them have taken off and they're doing great. They're great models. There are others that they're having to pull along to do. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just envisioning oil and water. That's
Mike Burke, and I want to introduce Mike Burke in 1998 started knowledge management in Federal Highway.
For better or for worse.
With the first community of practice was it using rumble scripts, right? Yeah. So we have some history here. Yes, Mike.
Well, have you mentioned, I kind of came in the middle, you're talking the structure. You talked a little bit about the high-level support, the discipline management structure, because in our organization just recently, our executive director, who is behind these disciplines, and whenever I hear discipline, I think kind of community practice in my own thinking. He talked to our senior leadership not long ago, and he told them basically when he's roaming around and asking employees about disciplines, he's still getting a few kind of funny looks on their face. Well, I'm not sure. Am I supposed to be? Is that really my job? Well, he told the upper management, he said, when I come back a year from now, everybody better know their discipline, they better know their role, and they better, be a part of it. So, a lot of these things that we're talking about in the organization, while things are kind of churning and melding, we do have some good pressures from the top down, as well as things bubbling from the bottom up. to make sure. I mean, they're not overstructuring. They're not saying this is what you shall do and how you shall do it. But it is definitely upper management interest and driven that we think this is good and we want people to be a part of it.
And this has been going on, this is about the third year for the disciplines. And we have about 2,800 federal employees, and then I would guess maybe another 200 contractors. So let's say around 3,000 people. And we are currently getting 2,300 unique users per month to the SharePoint site. So that's a good percentage, and we suspect that the majority of that is the disciplines that they're doing it. So for that region, considering people in federal government have no experience with, they had the communities of practice, but no experience with SharePoint, we're very encouraged by that number. All right? Ready? Yes.
You made the statement that some of them are early adopters, for the way to put it, others are scratching and clawing to not become part of it. Have you done any kind of analysis to see are there characteristics that are common to the two groups? In other words, is there a significant similarity between those who are late to come in versus those who are okay, this is cool?
In many cases, in a couple of cases, it's the discipline itself. That not only are they not embracing the collaboration portal, but they're having a hard time with the program piece over here I was talking about, coming together organizationally as well.
Now, is that from individuals, or is that a message you just pointed out how everybody gets their discipline, that they can't answer those questions? Because it wasn't socialized well across their discipline? Or?
From my perspective, it's the leadership of the discipline.
This is anything.
You had a question too. I'm sorry.
I was going to say anything discipline related was there weren't new people brought on to do the discipline, so it's on top of anybody's current workload. And some folks they kind of plan for that. And in some cases, it's just been harder to kind of wedge it in there. So it's generally not any one discipline that just neglects, let's say, the collaboration portion. It tends to all come together. People treat it all as one major program, so we're just more successful and more ahead.
And the ones that have embraced it as this is the way we currently operate, and this is the way we accomplish our business, they're turning out to be much more the early adopters than the ones that are still trying to work in the silos.
I was just going to say that's at least from my experience, the big hump is the fact that in order to get these practices in place and get people to make this cultural shift, at least at the beginning, you're reliant on that hierarchy to be championing and promoting. And if those are the people that are invested in the hierarchy in the silos, it's really hard to get any traction in that area. Your SharePoint site's going to do nothing if the manager for that functional area or discipline doesn't think there's value in it and wants to keep his group silent altogether.
Yeah. There was one more question in the back, and then we're going to move on.
Real quick, it was brought up earlier. Did you find that, and I think you had mentioned this, that somewhere along the way you probably had already been doing knowledge management in its formative phases or maybe further along and just didn't know it, just didn't have a name attached to it?
Well, this had a name attached to it since 1998 in that. But most people, knowledge management equals communities of practice. And over the years, it's broadened into, give you just a little bit of history. Mike was doing knowledge management, and about 6-7 years ago, I was brought into the agency to work on distance learning. And organizationally, Mike and I came together. And very quickly, we realized that it was hard to separate what was training and what was knowledge management. So we started talking about knowledge sharing. And on the distance learning side, Federal Highway has embraced web conferencing. I mean, that is something that they couldn't operate without now. And so knowledge management for us is all of those pieces coming together, whether you're sharing with an external customer or if you're sharing inside. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
All right.
So I'd like you to raise your hand if you've heard this kind of conversation. It starts out like, well, we need a site or something to do collaboration. And the rebuttal is, well, how about that thing we use to do our daily work? Oh, no. We can't be blending our collaboration and our daily work. Anybody heard that one? Yeah. You can't not mix the two. They are the same. And I think that's always been one of the interesting things that we've approached this, and one of the ways we approach discipline initiatives as well. When people say, well, I already do all this daily work each day, and we realize, okay, well, what does your daily work consist of? Maybe having a virtual meeting to co-write a handbook for onboarding. Like you're already doing knowledge management. And you're probably already doing it in some sort of virtual community atmosphere, but for a long time, creating a virtual community, a community of practice, massive investment. It took a very long time. And we entered a phase where actually it didn't take that much time at all. It was relatively easy. So the takeaway there, getting people to collaborate is not really the issue from our mind. It's getting them to collaborate effectively and kind of helping usher that in. For a while, there just wasn't a place to do that work and create communities. And that's what we really turned our portal into. And I still kind of go back and forth with people on this and say, well, you have our static intranet and then there's no, information is not static. That's an incredible rarity to actually have static information. So let's focus on the things that are dynamic, which is generally everything. So some of the things we've been able to do here is get together people that are geographically dispersed and show them, hey, remember that community of practice that you were a part of, where you had a sponsor or a leader, and every now and then they would kind of stoke the coals to get the conversation going. They'd reach out on the side. They'd do a little bit of administration, but that wasn't really their job. They had a daily job as well. We said, this is the same thing. Okay, take that practice, and now imagine you can do a lot of your daily work in that same kind of environment. You can really self-manage it. You can really build it from the ground up. Taking that kind of approach, that model, has been really interesting for us because we don't have to invest all of our resources into setting anything up for anybody. For instance, a discipline site, they self-manage that. We just sort of got in between and said, hey, do you want this? Well, you have to manage it. And people said, okay. And then they realized, what have we gotten ourselves into? But now that new organization has been able to really build something.
I believe, and that is that we used our shared drive for the files, which if I'm located in Nebraska and I'm in headquarters, we don't have the same drives. We don't have access to each other's drives. Who's doing what as far as training goes? We have the National Highway Institute, we have the resource centers, we have individuals with an interest providing training. No one quite knows what's going on with everyone else. And finally, email. We have these long threaded emails and discussions, and then once it's done, there's no record of what was said and what was done.